Better slow down. People are out here driving crazy during the holidays. Unbelievable. Kind of difficult to even cross the street. But as I've been out here for quite some time, I thought I'd just flip on the recording and tell you about a situation that happened over the holidays here in late December 2016 that our U.S. government was responsible for. They, on December 23rd, 2016, through the president, Barack Obama, the U.S. government passed a law to control all media and free speech in the country. I will repeat that. On December 23rd, 2016, the president, Barack Obama, passed a law to control all media and free speech in our country here in 2016. And that's what we're gonna delve into as deeply as we can here on the Topkats Rebel Connection. Topkats Pride, bringing to you the unusual but factual and oftentimes ignored and controversial wild news, keeping you in the know while you're on the go. And now, your wild news reporter, Q. Pate. Man, oh man, if I experience another year of people using their social media platforms like they are little adolescent children, I'm going to pull all my fur out. I'm going to pull all my fur out and go up to the nearest petrified tree and gnaw all my teeth out. That's what I'm going to do. Because here in 2016, late in December, very, very close to the new year of 2017, man, I am so tired of seeing this go on and on and on with adults that are well over the age of 30, with no disrespect for those who are under the age of 30 that are adults, because in most of the Western world, as I want you to know, I understand that adults are from 18 years old on up. But I'm talking about another class of adults. I'm talking about those who are 30 and above, for spectacular and very specific reasons. Just elaborate on it for a moment and you probably understand where I'm coming from. And if not, well, I'm going to continue with saying that those who are 30 and over, during these times of very much strife and very mysterious type of dilemmas concerning our society in the United States, as well as our government, as well as our president, Barack Obama, I think that at the very least, your social media platform should be used in a balanced type fashion. What I'm saying is that you should be taking it upon yourself to not only learn and research and watch like a hawk, like a big American eagle on what's going on with the United States government, because it affects you, it affects your sister or brother and your grandparents, etc., as well as the youth that will come after us the behavior of whatever administration is currently in Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, which, by the way, is not even a part of America, just like the famed and very powerful small country in Italy called the Vatican. The D.C. District of Columbia is not a part of the United States, just like the Vatican is not actually a part of Italy. So I kind of misspoke there. But when you go to the region of Italy, you will find the Vatican there. However, it's the laws that makes it sovereign, that makes it its own country. Yes, indeed. My name is Q Pate, here on the Topkats Rebel Connection. And today we are going to find out exactly why we're going to wake up on social media and for the last bit of time that may be allotted by the U.S. government due to the recent statutes and laws that were passed on December 23rd, 2016. We're going to learn why all along, since the platforms have existed as a blessing, as I would like to extend, as I see it, we will understand why we should have been using these platforms all along to educate one another, to inform one another, to help one another, and everything else that you could possibly think of in that realm that is positive and proactive. Social media platforms have been created, certainly, no doubt, for surveillance. Let's just get that out there right off from the jump. We are fully aware of that, most of us who congregate here in this spectrum. Nevertheless, with that being said, it is also something that we can use to help one another. Because if you have not realized by now, when the mainstream media talks about FAKE news, fake news, they're actually talking about themselves. Although, if you are a mindless TV watcher and a thinker whose thoughts are only perpetuated and I would say very much programmed by what's coming out of your television, from your favorite news program, from your favorite late night talk show host, etc., then you know that they do not like any competition on no platform whatsoever, whether that be news, whether that be entertainment, or whatever it may be. They do not like competition. Well, thank God, or whoever or whomever it may be that gave us the internet. And I think it's a blessing, a curse and a blessing, a double-edged sword, if you will. It has parts that you have to be pretty careful about because it is cutting. It does have the ability to harm you. We often have to walk that very fine, very sharp line in order to be able to get out of life what we want, in order to be able to get to the covert occult information, meaning hidden, occult meaning hidden. We often have to be on that fine, sharp edge of the sword because the U.S. government actually wields this sword very, very powerfully against us. On December 23rd, 2016, President Barack Hussein Obama passed what is known as the Countering Disinformation and Propaganda Act. The Countering Disinformation and Propaganda Act. This act was actually something that was put into the system by Senators Portman and Murphy. Now, Portman, that's the last name of Mr. Rob Portman, who is a Republican from Ohio. And Murphy is the last name of Chris Murphy, who is a Democrat from Connecticut. Now, I lull and I emphasize both senators' party affiliation, because I want to highlight at this particular moment how they are working together with this very huge, very important, very alarming piece of legislation. They are not on opposite sides of the fence, of the river. They are totally in tandem. They are the same side of the equation. They are the opposite sides of the same coin. Rob Portman, a Republican from Ohio, and Chris Murphy, a Democrat from Connecticut. Now, this act, which was passed in the Senate, quietly, very quietly passed on December 23rd, 2016. It was actually started and put into effect in March of 2016. But on December 8th, this act passed in the Senate, and the National Defense Authorization Act, also known as the NDAA for 2017, this piece of legislation, well, I shouldn't say piece, this big boulder of legislation was inserted. It was placed so delicately inside of the NDAA. Now, as of President Obama's signing of the NDAA for 2017, on December 23rd, 2016, Friday, when everybody was preparing for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and all the festivities that come out and around and intertwine in our lives during that particular time frame. This is when this was put into effect. And if you've noticed, like I've noticed, the mainstream media has said nothing about this whatsoever. And I would like to just say, I am so sick of y'all, and shame on all of you. But I know actually who you represent, and I know what your credence actually is. And on December 23rd, President Obama signed this into force. And now this legislation is law. The Countering Disinformation and Propaganda Act is now law. My name is Q Pate, here on the Topkats Rebel Connection. Edutainment wrapped in eclectic music. So there is certainly one thing that I have to say before I just get into this piece of an article that I'm going to leave the link to in the description box for you to check out, for you to go over thoroughly in the description information area. I want to say that one of the things that we're going to have to stop doing here in 2017, coming up real soon, is stop talking about everything being all good. It's all good. You know how the slogan goes. Nah, I don't think so. I don't think that it's all good. Irregardless of what you may think, this particular piece of legislation that is actually huge, that is actually a nuclear device as far as I'm concerned, this is not all good. You see, this new huge boulder of legislation further chips away at all media and press rights and liberties in the United States of America. It also sets and darkens the stage for a future witch hunt, and I guess I should make that plural, future witch hunts on websites, video channels, Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts, Instagram accounts, etc., being shut down purely as a result of accusations that any media site, social platform, or media outlet is considered as a source of disinformation and propaganda, or what has been coined here in 2016 as fake news, thereby becoming a victim of the government as it will be shut down. Those websites, those social media platforms, those video channels, and radio broadcast podcast platforms will be shut down. I'm just going to let that marinate for 1 second, because if you're at all conscious and in the know about what that means, you should have a full feeling of clarity of what this exactly means as far as the country goes and how it is going to be governed from henceforth, as long as this legislation is in effect. The U.S. government will decide through its organizations, which have been created to monitor and oversee this situation. The U.S. government will be over all communication, period. And without a doubt, that brings to mind for many of us that are over the age of 35 and 40 and on up, that brings to mind the governing of countries like China. That brings to mind the governing of countries like the past Soviet Union. That brings to mind the governing of countries like Germany prior to World War II. World War II ended in 1945, and the regime that was totally responsible for this type of legislation that we are seeing right now in our country is one which caused a tremendous amount of problems, a tremendous amount of human rights violations, and on and on and on. So, as I mentioned before, no, it's not all good. And that is something that certainly should be dropped from conversation. Now, this legislation has been put into effect, as aforementioned, by Senators Portman Murphy. And Portman is Rob Portman, and Murphy is Chris Murphy. Portman is a Republican. Chris Murphy is a Democrat. And this has been constructed under the guise, behind the veil of a strategy to defend America, a strategy to defend America's allies against propaganda and disinformation from Russia, China, and others coincidentally. and it has been signed into law as part of the fiscal year of 2017 as the National Defense Authorization Act's Conference Report. The bipartisan bill, which was introduced by Senators Portman and Murphy in March of 2016, will improve the ability of the United States to counter foreign propaganda and disinformation from our enemies by establishing an interagency center housed at the State Department to coordinate and synchronize counter-propaganda efforts throughout the U.S. government. Now, let me just pause there for a moment and share with you the verifiable fact that the United States is actually a corporation founded in 1871. And for many of you, that is not any type of new news, and that's fine. But for most, that is new news. 1871 is when the United States was founded as a corporation, and the head of the corporation is President Barack Obama, and of course the vice president is Joe Biden in the District of Columbia, which is totally separate from the United States that we know to be what we have been taught is our actual home. And according to the law and the different words that mean one thing in public society and it means another as far as law is concerned, that means what we feel like totally exists and has always existed is a fallacy. When you look in the Black's Law Dictionary, which is a reference point for lawyers in the United States, the Black's Law Dictionary, lawyers and law use a totally different language than we do, which causes us, when we hear the words that we define as having a particular meaning and according to our dictionaries that is given to us as a reference point for words, those words don't mean the same when it applies to lawyers and courts. This is where the trickery comes in. This is where the confusion arrives. This is what we have to understand that we must gather knowledge about, because this is the premise that they operate from. For example, a lawyer who may say that they represent you in court after you sign the document, giving them a very minimal type of liberty. When you sign with a lawyer and or a law firm, those lawyers and the law firm actually represent the court, not you or I. They actually do not ever really represent us. They represent the court. Just let that marinate for a while. Yes, that $150 per hour that you're paying, which is normally the standard, is going to a representative who actually is not a representative, but at the very least, because we are not schooled and versed and educated and have knowledge of the law, at the very least, this poser who we've hired fraudulently on paperwork that says they represent us actually does not represent us in the court of law. It represents the court. Well, and that's where their power, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, is derived from, because they are better than us going in there totally blinded and without any knowledge whatsoever on how the system works. This bill will increase the authority, resources, and mandate of the Global Engagement Center to include state actors like Russia and China, as well as non-state actors. And I'm sure many of you are realizing that this information goes back to the early 90s when President Bush Sr., the father of the other Bush, the president that became the chief executive in the year 2000. This information actually coincides very much to what President Bush Sr. talked about back in the day with the New World Order. The center also will be led by the State Department, but with the active senior level participation of the agencies. The center will develop, integrate, and it will synchronize a whole of the government initiatives to expose and counter, allegedly, foreign disinformation operations by enemies and proactively advance fact-based narratives that support United States allies and interests. In 2017, Topkats Pride, through Topkats Rebel Connection, will be providing many of our shows in a radio broadcast live or a radio podcast format, so we can more efficiently provide you with international and national news. In the description information box will be the link for you to click on to go to this website at zerohedge.com. Zero Hedge, HEDGE.com, for this article in its entirety. My name is Q Pate, here for the Topkats Rebel Connection and the Topkats Pride. Thank you for joining me.